By the way, we have Albert Breer sit down with us here on Radio Row.
We got 5 minutes with Albert, Hogue. Don't mess around. The man is busy.
Then we might as well get to it. As you might imagine, we're talking about Caleb Williams.
Yeah. There's be a lot of that next couple months, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but especially in the last few days and over the weekend, what we've been talking about is this whole idea of, any thought that he might not actually want to come to Chicago and what's actually true and what's not with that.
I think it's hard to tell, because what I've been able to ascertain, just as far as the stuff that's been floating around with him, is that he's actually a really good kid. His dad can be a lot, and I think that there's that part of it where it's like, okay, when you were talking, the really crazy stuff, right? Like the stuff about wanting equity in a team and all of these things that just aren't going to happen. A lot of that was coming from his dad. Now, the kid ultimately has control over his own process and what actually gets pushed out there and all the rest of it. So does the kid feel strongly enough where he wants to shove his way out of Chicago into Washington, which is where he's from? We've seen it before. Eli Manning sort of used his dad that way, and Archie took all the bullets for him. So I wouldn't say it's impossible. But, just as far as what I know, and not what I think, what I know is that, his dad was behind a lot of the stuff that was out there. And a lot of this is going to kind of come down to what the kid wants, which makes it unpredictable because some of that noise that you're hearing out there wasn't really him.
Do you think the Commanders are strategizing Cliff with him? Or do you think that's just who they want? Period?
Cliff loves Caleb Williams.
Okay.
Cliff said to me on the record that the comparisons between he and Patrick Mahomes, right, like all of that, he said it's eerie how similar they are. And Cliff, remember, was the one in 2017 who would tell everyone until he was blue in the face how Patrick Mahomes was much better than everybody thought. And so, I think, you line the whole thing up. Cliff's there. New ownership, looking to make a splash. Caleb Williams is from there. It wouldn't surprise me if Washington put together some sort of blockbuster offer to move up a spot and get Caleb Williams.
Albert, what have you kind of gained or learned about Justin Fields and maybe the interest that he is, garnered right now and how teams kind of view him?
I think he's viewed as a quarterback who A-plus person, really good leader, really good worker, really smart. Like, he checks so many boxes. There's still that thing where, does he see it fast enough? Mm-hmm. Does he need to see the receiver come open to throw him the ball? Can he throw with anticipation? Those are still the things 3 years later that you're looking at with him. So what it means is that you've got to build an offense a certain way for him. And are you willing to commit to him that way and build an offense that will work for him that might be a little bit different? It's worked before. Mm-hmm. Like the Eagles, for example, with Jalen Hurts, and I think this is probably the best example. That first year for Nick Sirianni, I think it was 6-7 games in, Sirianni gave up play calling, handed it over to Shane Steichen. They put in the Oklahoma run game,
right.
And the Oklahoma run game was sort of what made Jalen feel more comfortable. They're doing the passing game now comes off of that run game, and now all of a sudden, you have something that you're building on, and it really wound up working. So it can work. It's just going to take that level of commitment, and whether or not you can find a team that's going to be willing to make that commitment is the question. His trade market, maybe a day 2 pick and then a day 3 pick on top of it, whatever that might look like. And I think it would have to be one of these teams that's maybe in the middle of the first round. This is the way I've sort of looked at it. Like one of these teams is in the middle of the first round where it's like they don't love the second cluster quarterbacks, right? Like the guys behind Williams, May, and Daniels. And they're not close enough to go up and get one of the top 3 guys. Maybe it'd be one of those teams that would go and get him.
You did a lot of great work last year around the time that the Bears made the trade with the Panthers.
Thank you.
Well, you did. You were on top of a lot of things. Do you sense, and we're probably still early in this process, but do you sense anything that's different from the Bears side of this year? You know what I mean?
Versus last year?
Yeah, versus where they were at with Justin, and obviously the access to that they have this year to different quarterbacks than were available last year.
Yeah, I think it is a little different. I think last year, I would say just at this point here, right now, where we are versus where we were a year. I mean, forget how Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson played. I would say the league in general has a higher opinion of this group than they did last year's group. Now, we all know what C.J. Stroud has done since, and phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
But this is a more highly regarded group coming out. And the other thing is, with Justin, you're now a year closer to that fifth-year option, and you're a year closer to having the price potentially rise on what it's going to cost to keep him. And that's a very real factor. You now have a decision to make, right, in May on whether or not you pick up that fifth-year option. And if you don't pick up the fifth-year option, then Justin's in a contract year. Whereas if you draft Caleb first overall, or you trade down and draft Drake May second overall, say, you've got those guys under financial control for the next 4 years. So you restart that clock. It allows you to probably build a little bit more aggressively around the young quarterback. With the flip side being, if you did trade out and did choose Justin, you can get another bounty of picks, and now you're going to be able to build aggressively in the draft around your quarterback.
Do you think the league looks at Caleb is here and May's here, or is it closer than that? I think so. Caleb didn't have his best year this year. Now that said, I think a lot of people would have said Luck was better in 10 than he was in 11 at Stanford, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that stuff can come down to what's around him. Luck didn't have Harbaugh his last year at Stanford, right? Mm-hmm. I believe early in his career he had Toby Gerhart. He didn't have Toby Gerhart at the end, right? So, and it's sort of the same with Caleb, where the circumstances were better for him his last year at Oklahoma and then last year at USC than they were this year at USC. That said, a lot of NFL people that I really respect think Caleb is a once in every few years type of prospect, right? Where it's, that Trevor Lawrence, John Elway, Peyton Manning, that tier, Andrew Luck, that tier, where there are very few players that are in that group, where it's this guy projects to be the type of guy who can carry a team. That's how Caleb's seen. I think Drake May is worthy of going first overall and would be first overall in some drafts, but he's just maybe a notch below that tier.
Yeah,
interesting.
Makes a lot of sense. We know you got to run. Thank you for sitting down with us. We really appreciate it. I know you got a full week of work coming ahead. Where should people follow everything?
You can SI.com. You got, I'll be doing all kinds of things around here too, so I won't waste your time with all of that.
Keep it rolling, SI.com. Yeah. We're rooting for you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
We all silly like the mayor.